home of 50,000 words and you're like, lines, and you're like, what's going on? Yeah, rehearsal makes it better. Did anyone play Uncharted 2? Yeah, that was like, even the cutscenes were like extraordinary, right? I mean, the game is really cool too, but it felt like you could really be down with these characters. But yeah, the face cap thing can be tricky because you have to like go, oh no, there's a thing over there, but you can't turn. You have to go, oh no, there's a thing over there. And if you move, then it ruins it, and it takes much longer to record everything. When you're just doing VO, you can bang out like cue after cue, but when they have to sync everything, they're like rolling on this, rolling on that. Okay, go, marking it. Oh, you move too much, you gotta do it again. And sometimes they do makeup, and sometimes they do little micro dots, and those little dots are like expensive. Really expensive if one like drops off. I'm like,
Don't touch it. Next question. Yes, sir.
Alright, so certain games, like you said, Final Fantasy 13, Bayonetta, and like Devil May Cry 3 had American voice actors fly out to Japan, and they did all the things like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry. They were the original voice actors. Like, how is that for you guys? Like, is that something you guys would want to do if you had the chance?
In a heartbeat. Get flown to Japan to work and get paid? What, are you kidding?
Yeah, I didn't get to go to Japan on that. I just recorded VO. And like Orphan, I haven't played the part, but I think he's more like a big weird, which I did mocap because I don't have that many appendages or anything. Yeah, I know like Johnny the Devil May Cry, and he had a lot of stories about that. I know Stephanie was on Bayonetta, and she had a lot of stories about that. It sounds really, really cool. I know, I wish you were here for that. I know that she played like, is she a little girl now? Yeah, she played like a little girl, and she's short, so that was great. But she had to also like embellish some of the motion stuff, because I thought this was a really cool story. She was talking about like holding her mom's hand and like walking around, but she also was looking up more to look even smaller. She would raise her head more, but look down with her eyes, so the little kid would look like she's looking up at her mom. Little things like that, but no one told her to. She just was like, oh, this would help, and they were like, oh, good, good, good. Also, there was a language barrier when they were, the director didn't speak English, so they had an interpreter who was Chinese, but lives in Japan and speaks English and Japanese. And then, but her English was so-so, so Stephanie was like, do you speak Mandarin? And she's like, yeah. She's like, okay, we'll just do that. So she went from like Japanese to Mandarin, everyone else is doing English. Yeah. And because it was infrared cameras and they need line of sight, a lot of times they'll build props in the space where you do motion capture is called a volume, because it's 3 dimensions. It's not just like a stage. It's also got height. And they'll build like wireframe cars or tables and stuff. Because if like we're doing this, if in the game we're sitting at a table, this would block the infrared cameras from seeing our precious body movement. So they'll have wireframe things and weird props and people sort of ducking out of the way and holding things up for you to grab. It's really weird looking.
Whole new world. Next question. Yes, sir. Good, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. With that, I can't tell.
Do you have any advice for working with voice actors for someone who is working on the development and production side of a video game? Like someone who's actually creating it and building it, for someone who would be working with the voice actors?
Well, yeah, hire professionals. No, I mean that seriously, because an awful lot of game companies, and I was involved in Black Hawk Down back in the day, and we were the first group of professional actors that Novasoft had ever hired. And it was remarkable the reaction the management there had, because they were going, well, wow, why does this sound so different? Because it's not the receptionist doing the part, it's a trained actor. Understand that actors, just understanding of actors, but we're like walking egos, So we like to be the center of attention, but in gaming, acting is really kind of another skin, another part of the layering on the wireframe, as far as I'm concerned. It's the game action that's important.
Wireframe. I saw what you did there.
I'm so asleep. So understand what the purpose of the actor is, to add emotion. So you want to make sure that the dialogue is emotional and give them context. If you can give an actor context, you get so much more out of them, and it'll integrate into the story so much better. And try not to be, if you're directing them, it's more about what the actor needs to feel than what they need to say or how they need to say it. And if you concentrate on the emotion, it'll enhance the story more than just words. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually worked at a game developer a while ago. I was an audio lead, and I was in charge of dialogue, sound effects, everything but the music. And yeah, I understand development. Are you were the developer?
I'm going to school for development, yes.
Cool. Go to GTC, Game Developers Conference, right?
Yeah, San
We
Francisco.
just had the one on the East Coast
Yeah.
about a week or two ago.
East Coast. Wait.
Yeah, EGC, ED,
Oh, EGDC. That's
yeah,
hard to
East
say.
Coast.
Well, one of the things, okay, so in game development, it's like everything is like a big, massive, crazy, everything's going on at once. There's so many more important things to deal with, but it really deserves a little time aside. A lot of time, like a lot of game producers and directors I know are like they'll build in like I won't record unless you give me at least 2 days with the script before we have to record. I mean, people will show up on the day of the recording and be like, "Ah, here it is, go," and you're like, "I've got 50,000 lines to sort through. What's the next one for this character?" And then things are changing all the time. It needs to be sort of locked down at some point so that there's prep time, at least. If there's rehearsal time, that's great too. But I would say that for being sympathetic to all the other constraints you have doing games and all the hard coding things and crazy deadlines and the goal being pushed back, that you just think for a second about the other person's perspective. It's huge. It's the golden rule, do unto others. Because the actors, when they show up, are usually told, it depends on the game or how well set up it is, but told very little, don't know what they're doing, and you're just trapped in a soundproof room, not knowing what's going on. And you're totally exposed. You're in there doing voices or yelling your brains out. That's another thing. You should try to save all the yelling for the end, because if you do all the yelling at the beginning, then you end up sounding like me right now, Sunday morning. Which is good. So that's a big thing. There's a story that I think it's Sue Blue's story, who directed me in Turtles for years. She was a misfit on Gem and the Holograms, on My Little Pony. She was on G.I. Joe. She was RC, the Transformer. What? But she's in the booth and she does a line, and then they're like, "Please hold," and then they all start going.
I've had that happen.
Oh.
It's so
Every session.
And then they're like, "Okay, next line." She's like,
Yes.
At some point, I don't know if she asked or if someone just was like, "Oh, by the way, we were just ordering lunch. Did you want anything?" And she's like, "Oh, this was about lunch. I don't want to eat that." Yeah, so and just letting someone know what's going on is huge, but it's something that's really easy to forget. So, the golden rule.
Next,
Two-part question. First, since this is a video game panel, have you guys ever had a chance to play The Flowers of Robert Mapplethorpe?